welcome to week 4 of our journey through the tarot.
This week, we focus our learning on the final 7 cards of the Major Arcana.
2 of these cards, the Devil and Judgment, are heavily influenced by religion.
We'll spend more time on these cards to help you understand how these religious ideas made their way into our esoteric world.
So grab your notebook and your trump cards 15 through 21, and let's finish our journey through the Major Arcana.
We're ready. The Devil card. I love this card so much. And the name of the video for YouTube is actually going to be why getting the Devil card is a good thing. So that's really, that's definitely putting a crink in somebody's Kool-Aid of like what they think it's about. All right. As you know, we want to present the cards with archetypes. The Devil card is the archetype of our shadow self. Did anybody see that coming? Because like that's a whole thing. So if the Devil card is our shadow self, this is remembering that our shadow self is what we deem, it's about us, unacceptable about ourselves. It's like things you don't want to see about yourself, because if you see them, you have to deal with them. So our shadow self is that, I don't even want to say darker, because that implies some kind of like scariness.
It's all the things you hide in a relationship for like 6 months until you get to know somebody, and then all the truth comes out, all your dirty laundry.
It's your dirty laundry. Oh, okay.
It starts to be revealed, you know, your habits that you don't really, you're like, gosh, I should really do better at picking up my dishes after I eat, or cleaning the kitchen, or whatever. It's all these little things about ourselves where we think we should be better or could be better.
We judge ourselves.
We judge ourselves, yes.
This week's cards are deep, you guys. So I want you to remember that this card is definitely about how we perceive and deceive ourselves. I know those rhyme, but it's how we perceive ourselves and how we deceive ourselves. So let's look at the symbolism within the card to help you remember the meaning. So at first glance, this card is literally artfully set up to deceive you and make you think like, oh my God, or somebody that gets the card, oh my God, that's so scary. Look at all these terrible symbols and like, oh, this looks really horrible. But it's like you see this creature looming over 2 humans that look trapped, and it's symbolizing that they're feeling trapped or being trapped. So that's what people, when they first look at the card, they're like, oh God, this is 2 people chained to the devil. Like I can't break away. I'm destined for failure of being under his control, using his and hers loosely. All right. So the devil creature is perching on a stand, and the man and woman are chained to the stand. This kind of implies ownership over something. They both have horns and tails, mimicking the devil. So they're taking on attributes of this creature. I think that what I love is that it symbolizes the outside influences that entrap us, because as we go further, you're going to see that they're not so trapped, that it's really themselves. Between the horns of the devil character, okay, we have that, the pentagram that's upside down. I don't know if they actually have a name for that, but an inverted pentagram, which in Christianity, and I would definitely say in like the Western culture, symbolizes something that's like satanic, evil, dark forces. So you're instantly thrown in by like, oh shit, this is not good. There's something demonic. There's going to be demons and possession. And, you know, it's the whole satanic kind of thing that people think, which is also misunderstood. But if you look at that, I want you to understand that the star, which is the pentagram, is a symbol of the 4 elements of air, earth, fire, water, and then spirit. And spirit is that top point. So when we invert it, spirit just becomes the thing that is least important to us. So we look at all the physical aspects and we're not paying attention. The lower priority is our spiritualism. So that's what that truly means. Okay, with the man on, okay, whoa, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm so excited to talk about the card. Sorry, I should just have ad-libbed this, but I'm trying to read. So the man has fire, and that the fire is the symbol of action and passion and even strength. And the woman has grapes on her tail. These are the tail symbols. I do have the card up. I'm sorry. I just thought like, is the card up? And so combine these elements show us that we're stuck in our own desires, where grapes are fertility. So that can be like the sex and reproduction and just getting your genes out there into the gene pool, and also luxuries. So grapes are a symbol of luxury and wealth. And then with the man, with the fire tail, it's more of like that passion, action, drive, conquer, burn things down. These are the material things or the worldly things that we can focus on instead of the spiritual things. So we go back to that pentagram being upside down. The devil's hand, I did not remove this. I'm going through the whole thing. So I want you to know that the devil's hand in that torch pointing down, the way that I see that, he's lighting the tail of the man. And this is where, like in Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire and gave it to man, but then was tortured in hell for forever. So you have like one deed being judged against another, trying to help somebody or not. And then who judges that to say, are we good and evil? Because when we get to where we're showing the lovers and the devil, this is a card that represents that scene of the Garden of Eden and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And it's the symbols of those, which I'm just going to go to that now so that you can see it. If you look at the devil card next to the lover's card, you can see that the other side of it, where you've got, I don't know how to describe that. How the lovers is like the good part of unity and being matched with somebody and having that a healthy relationship, whereas with the devil card, you can look at the aspects of it that become unhealthy. So it's mirroring it. Obsession, addiction. So it's where you go from the relationship with man and woman or partnerships that's healthy in the lovers, that's now dueled in the devil card that shows the unhealthy elements of relationships. Because when you're focused on somebody else, if you become obsessed or involved with somebody who is I would even say dangerous, then you feel stuck. But let's move on to where you have the chains around the necks of the two human figures. They're loosely on there, and this is the biggest clue to this card. All of the symbols that are involved in the devil card, it really comes down to those chains around their necks, that they could pull them off at any moment. That's the illusion. Everything in the card points to like ups and downs and bad, good, evil. Oh my gosh, all these forces. It all looks crazy and terrible. But it's what we choose to allow ourselves to continue to be in, and when we decide we're going to walk away, which is part of getting into the next card. But I will say, what I want you to really remember is that the devil card is good because it wakes us up. The devil card can scare you enough. It can bring things to the surface enough to say, hey, you need to really look at your habits, your relationships, I would say addictions, but that feels really strong. Like, whatever it is that you judge yourself on and how you see your habits of being good, bad, evil, whatever, it's telling you, you need to look at them and really wake yourself up and go, am I living in the way that I truly want to? Am I living for my higher purpose? Am I doing things that are for the good of all, especially myself? Like how is it that your habits are really affecting you? So the card is actually asking us to embrace our spirituality and turn away from the earthly things that distract us from our growth. We can get really sucked into like materialism and luxuries and sex and relationships, and stop focusing on growing ourselves and doing something that's like bigger and beyond our daily lives, which leads us right over into, I was about to say the tower.
I've got the tower.
No, my sheets are out. Oh, okay, that's fine.
I split them up.
We got to the tower.
To the tower. You can move it down to the
Oh,
tower.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
And onto the tower moment.
So after the devil, after all of that going on with the devil, we get to the tower, which is a card of change and awakening. That is the archetype. This card illustrates moments of sudden and unexpected change, violent upheaval, and the collapse of our established structures. If anybody remembers The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith and this little boy, and they're living in a gas station bathroom, this is at the depths of despair. So this is us, this is Will Smith. He's broke, he's homeless, he's taking care of his young son, his wife leaves him, and he lost his job. It's everything happening at once. Everything's just boom, falling down. we're breaking free in here, but in this card, the way that it relates back to the devil is in this card, we're actually breaking free of those chains in the devil card, what bound us in the devil card. Because when we're in the devil card and we're chained to these materialistic type situations or people or activities or how we live our lives, then there has to be a breaking point. And that's what's happening in the tower, is all of that is being stripped down so that we need this dramatic event to change. It's a wake-up call is what it is.
There's like a really popular thing happening right now with like sayings and Instagram and wherever. I've heard many people say it, but there's a thing that says our mind is more willing to accept a familiar hell than a new whatever. I can't remember the other part of it, but that's what reminds me of, like, we stay in that devil card mode because we're so comfortable with the bad habits, with the bad relationships, with the bad, continue the sentence however you want. And the tower moment is when we let all that crash and burn and we walk away from it. That is your tower moment. You're like, oh shit, everything has to.
And what's scary about the tower moment is what comes after that. You're like, I know in the devil card, I know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
In the tower card, you're going to strip everything away and I'm going to be bare again. And what I'm going to start from scratch. That's the unknown that is, so in this card, you didn't go over symbolisms, but I am in this card. So we have so I'm just going to explain the card a little bit to try to help it resonate with you. So we have the lightning, which symbolizes God striking the tower and knocking the crown off of the tower, which symbolizes materialism. And the scene is reminiscent of God destroying the Tower of Babel in the book of Genesis, symbolizing unexpected changes and turmoil. The two figures jumping from the burning tower as flames, they're in the shape of yods, rain down. So the fire little droplet things that are raining down around them, those are yods. The shape of them is the shape of yods, which is the first letter of God's name.
And if you don't know how to spell that, it's Y-O-D-S, yods, because I had to learn that. I didn't know what they were called.
If you count them, there are 22 yods, which is the number of cards in the Major Arcana from 0 to 21.
That's right.
Counting 0 to 21.
So it's giving into that cycle of saying, hey, all of this is supposed to happen in order to reach this thing, which is going to be the world.
And also the other thing about this is if you look at this card, whenever this comes up in a reading and someone's asking about it, you can look at where the tower was built on this rocky cliff that doesn't look like it's going to hold up. A big storm is going to come along, especially climate change, sea level rising, whatever,
Living in Florida.
and wash that away. So it's built on this unstable surface. So that the change is imminent because it was never going to stay. It was never going to be able to withstand and stand where it is for time. Remember this, when in a tarot reading, be sure to tell yourself there is nowhere to go but up from here. That's all. That's really, if this card comes up in a reading and you're reading someone, this is the bottom of it. This is rock bottom.
Yeah.
And you've got everything from here should improve.
You're going to start climbing, which leads us to the next card in progression, which is the star. And it's the archetype of hope. So thank you. I'm not doing my job. What I think of when I see the star card is when you are outside at night and you look up at the stars and you're sort of filled with wonder and hope and like, wow, like it's expansive. I'm just this small person dealing with something that's just it's so small compared to what the universe is. And that's where the hope really comes in. So the messages of hope and healing after an emotional experience, which is the tower moment that Kat talked about. We have the symbolism of a naked woman who represents the divine or a pure person, a star, and they're pouring water from two pitchers. And if you notice, those waters are just pouring and they're not like coming from anywhere. There's not a source. So that symbolizes the unlimited resources and renewal energies of hope, that you can always find hope in situations. When she's kneeling on earth and water for support, this is bridging the barriers between the representation of like magic. So I think of like the foot on the water. I guess it's kind of like Jesus walking on water, where you're like miracle, magic, however you want to take that message, but you're looking at something that is beyond our human understanding. You have to believe in magic and hope and something else to get the message. And then with the land being that fertile ground and having divine assistance. So 1 foot on land and 1 foot like standing on water, you know that there's divine within this card, that you have assistance there as long as you reach out. The bird, okay, I love this. The bird that's in the tree, he's over there. He's like,
He's watching the scene.
I love it. As a bird watches, it's an ibis, which is the symbol of the Egyptian god Thoth, who was the master of knowledge. So this god was not meant to involve himself in our dealings, but to watch over to see how we react. So when we go through devastating stuff and we regain our hope, you can call it faith, belief, you can call it whatever your spiritual system is, that is what he's looking at to say there's growth there. So he's just watching over this with the knowledge, knowing like you're getting the knowledge, he's knowing it. It's a whole cute thing. The water is also symbolizing our unconscious, and the land with the material realm has eight pointed stars. Okay, I had to put like commas in between that, otherwise it looked like 88. So it's 8 of the 8 pointed stars. What do we know 8s are? They are a symbol of infinity, right? It's the infinity symbol, just not turned on the right side, but it's lending towards how this card is limitless. So remember that when you're looking at the stars and you're getting that feeling of hope for the future, it's like wishing on a star towards the future. So this is where we find our hope. It's just infinitely out there. Anytime you want to tap into that card of hope, it's always there. I don't have like a thing to go to your next one where I had it before, where it leads to the moon. Sorry.
I did it differently this time. We're switching back and forth.
I love it. Always a surprise for you and me. It was like the sun. That's not wait.
And from hope, we go to the card that's always, it's confounded me because I love the moon. I think most witches love the moon. I mean, I'm totally in awe of the moon. Like every time the moon is full, it's just like, I love you, moon. Except that this card is about this is a card of illusion. So that is our archetype, illusion. Illusions are perceptual experiences in which information arising from real external stimuli leads to an incorrect perception or false impression of an object or event from which the stimulation comes.
I feel like we need to reword that maybe a little bit. Okay.
So it's, it's illusions are, it's just the illusion is the perception of something that you see one way that's really not that way. Like I look at the moon and I'm like, oh, the moon. And the moon doesn't exist without the sun because the sun's reflecting. So with no sun, there's no moon, right?
Yes, that's part of if you think about what the moon actually is, it reflects the sun's light. So that is where the illusion comes from. The moon does not produce its own light.
The moon doesn't produce its own light, which is like, what?
Doesn't seem real, right?
That's it all the time. Fair. The moon is like,
it's our light. We love it.
Yes.
But maybe that's because we're both water signs and we're very comfortable living in illusion and delusion. So we're perfectly fine in this made-up world.
So but the moon card represents the unknown, where both dreams and nightmares are made. Ooh.
It's a good distinction to say that, because this is where we go back to what Kat said. It was impeccable as a definition, but harder to understand as you say it. When we look at the real events in our lives and then our perception of them and how we reflect that in our own experiences, you can have two people experience the same upbringing and they view it 100% different. This is in psychology. This is where part of that illusion comes from, is truth is only as good as the person who experienced it. Somebody can't own your truth and you can't own theirs. Like truth is yours. And that's where we can become disillusioned and we can have our own thoughts around things. If you've ever met somebody who jumps to conclusions really, really fast, that's the moon card at work a little bit. They're sort of, are you doing a tappy thing for yourself? No.
I admit I might jump to conclusions.
It is somebody who can have an experience, and they're so involved in it that their own emotions cause them to have that filter over it, where somebody standing over here is watching the same scene and they're like, that's not what they meant, that's not what happened. So in that illusion of experience, the moon card is at play with that, because it's a reflection of our own thoughts onto our reality. Yes, I think we did a good job justifying that first explanation. It was
The
good.
other thing we have is, people act crazy under the moon, especially the full moons. So I don't know if you know this or not, but the Latin word for moon is luna, and from luna comes the word lunacy. And did you know that in the Middle Ages, people believed that the insane had flown off to the moon?
The insane had flown off to the moon.
That's what they thought. Crazy people flew off to the moon. That's so weird. Like, really? Did they disappear, or did they, what happened to them? Or in their minds? Is that what they meant by their minds? But so I'm going to talk about the symbolism on this card, so that we can just kind of get to know the different what we see here to help us remember it. So we have yods, which, remember, yods are the first letter of the name of God, and those are around the sun, I believe. I'm sorry, the moon. We have pillars. We have two pillars and a path, and the pillars and that path look like a gateway. To me,
it's a gateway.
We also have represented a dog and a fox, representing our animal selves. Remember, the people acting crazy at the moon, that wild side of us comes out. And duality, the tame and the wild. And then we
domesticated dog, wild fox. Now, and I've heard it fox or wolf. So if you guys are thinking the same thing, I've heard fox and I've heard wolf. You decide.
Yeah, it can be. It's
decide. One is wild, one is tame. Whatever you want it to be.
One's domestic and one is wild.
Yeah.
So they're what are the two sides of us.
Yes.
And then we have a crayfish or a lobster or whatever you want to, a crab or something. A crawdad, I don't know, that's coming up out of the water. And this is representing our deepest terrors emerging from the deep, dark depths. This is represent that crayfish that's creeping up out of the water, that is never actually going to get out of the water. He's going to slink back in. He's going to come back out. That's our universal fear. That's what that is.
It's your subconscious too. If you think about like the depths of the water, that's where our subconscious lives, and where we have limited access to on why we believe certain things. All of this building to the illusion within the moon card.
And then we have water and the sun reflected in the moon. So we see the face of the moon in the sun, which reminds us that the moon doesn't have its own light. Without the sun, the moon has no light.
Yeah.
So to remember this card, remember that the moon reflects the light of the sun, meaning our dreams reflect the nature of our soul.
Yes.
Ooh.
So I think that that's a really good point, where you have what you do in your waking life will influence or affect your dreams. So the more that you become disillusioned, the more that you confront all of your fears and your things, your dreams can build into truer elements within your life. I think that's sort of what the moon card means for me. Again, it's supposed to mean something sort of dark, but I love it. When I get the moon card, I'm always like, ooh, magical.
I always think that too. I've always thought it was like really positive card, and it's really about illusions.
You know what? For us, it still is. Oh, you know what we didn't go over?
We're going to show
I do want to show this. Okay, so that was my first zoom, and I was actually supposed to ask Kat like which one she liked. So this is the death card sort of zoomed in. You can see the pillars, but in case you can't, I put a red arrow in there. I was going to ask you which one you liked better.
I think it's good for you to be able to point it out, because
have the red in there.
Okay.
So
because what are we looking at?
We're looking at the death card that has the same gateway and pillars as the moon card. So when we think about the transition of the cards going forward, the scenery actually is like, that's in the, do you call that the?
We're looking at the other side of it. Well,
Yeah,
we're on the other,
gate.
Side of it.
Sure.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just that there's a story through the scenery within the cards, and we just love that, finding all those little hidden things. So we're going from the moon, which reflects the sunlight, right into the sun, the source of the light. So of course, the source of our light and the archetype is joy. The sun is responsible for the things that grow in our world. Under the sun, everything becomes joyous. Life literally thrives. Okay, so when you see this card, it does look like things are thriving. Sunflowers are popping up past a wall. This kid on a horse is like waving a banner. It's just happy, happy news. The clarity in the sun card comes only after we've spent time in the darkness. Sorry, my kid just texted me, and since I'm on my Mac, it flashes on the screen, and that was I don't know what I said. I had to tune back into my lesson. I love that. It used to be that school called like every time
Every time we're on meeting.
every time. Okay. I'm gonna reread my sentence because I really lost my train of thought and now I feel flush. Okay, clarity. The clarity in the sun card comes only after we've spent time with the darkest parts of ourselves. And these are the devil, the tower, and then in the moon. So we've just gone through 3 really difficult situations where we are confronted with our bad behaviors, maybe our shadow self. Then our entire world is shook to the ground and we fall out of our tower and we're like left there. And then we have to look, well, then there's the star, but then the moon is showing us where are we disillusioned at? Like we have to come to terms with being responsible for our own thoughts and the way that we live our lives. So at the sun card, we start experiencing a joyful release after these very hard cards. So you can imagine when somebody gets the sun card, it's like, oh, I bet you've had really hard times and now you're finally building to that thing that makes you really joyous. Like you're in search of it, you're on the path for it. That's one of your goals. You're looking towards that light. You're no longer facing behind you and away from the sun. You're like looking straight at it and following it, and keeping the sun on your face. We also prepare for forgiveness and wholeness, which are the cards to come in Judgment and the World. So we take this brief stop to like bask in the sun, in all of our truth. Everything is shown. Our darkness is illuminated because we're getting ready to go into that Judgment card and onto the world. So this is a wonderful pit stop in between having everything just kind of like torn apart and broken down. And it's like, oh my gosh, can I just stop and appreciate how authentic I'm living right now before I just acknowledge the last 2 parts of the journey. The symbolism within the card is probably pretty easy to recognize, but we'll go through it. A bright yellow sun and sunflowers growing on the garden wall represent our vitality. Like after dealing with our dark parts, we actually get a stronger will to live out our purpose. So the child on horseback with the arms outstretched, yes, holding a giant red banner representing, of course, action and passion, you guys. I'm going to keep saying it. Every time you see red, action and passion. And he's wearing a flower crown with a feather. This is all just the symbol of triumph and owning his moment in the sun. He's like all about it, all the symbols of the sun. A gray horse, which is pretty important, and a gray garden wall represent the unconscious and the unknown. It doesn't mean that we've rebuilt our life yet. We just know that we've dealt with our hardship and we're moving on to like those final stages of like, at least I'm living authentically, and whatever comes next, I've already dealt with my shadow side and I'm ready to accept the possibilities that are in my future. So a thing to remember with the sun card, if you had to just like read it one liner for it, the sun illuminates everything, including our soul's enlightenment. So when you get that card, you're looking at somebody who is starting to illuminate their soul, who's starting to really realize their soul purpose on earth. And then we're heading over to,
and then we go to the Judgment card. So we were going to do a deeper dive into this card because it can be, can you change cards, please?
oh, I'm sorry. Dang, I'm not good at this today.
All right, there you go.
Okay, the Judgment card.
The Judgment card. So
This
there's
is a deeper dive card.
Yeah.
Like that's reading it.
So there's a lot going on in this card. And first of all, it's got all this religious symbology around it. So we got the archangel blowing a trumpet, an alarm that now is the time. We've got the dead rising from their graves, reminiscent of Christ's resurrection, the rapture, or Judgment Day. welcome to eternity and
Yeah.
an awakening.
It's an awakening.
The cross on the banner, the red cross on the white banner, represents a crossroads. This is big because
This is the symbol. This is what we want to remember for this card, not the whole doomsday or Judgment Day thing.
yeah,
But remember this cross. It's going to give you the best information about this card.
okay. So one part of the cross is that we judge ourselves and we deem we're not worthy.
This is
So
our
we-
judgment.
So we say stuck.
Okay. And then
You do not progress in the world
what's this one?
where everything is possible. So that's what the vertical line or
We're
the horizontal line represents.
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, where we've got the vertical line, this is where we forgive ourselves and we move on from our mistakes to go and experiment again and have a fuller life. So that cross is really important because it represents a crossroads for us.
All right, you guys want to see a magic trick? Here's how you remember the card. When you see that red cross, red is action and passion. Okay, so we want to get on with our lives. And when we're at this Judgment Day, ready? Here is the land. And we're at our crossroads. This is the person. Guess what we're going to do? We're just going to keep on walking right off that. So when you think about that cross as a crossroad, the human side of it being that, read that part again, this.
The vertical,
Yeah.
we forgive ourselves and move on from our mistakes.
Forgiveness. How do we get past being in a land of mistakes? Do we run away from people? Do we move towns? Do we just change our number? Do we quit our job? What do we do after we've made a mistake and we're judging ourselves? If we forgive ourselves, we are able to walk past that and say, I know I made a mistake, but I'm going to continue on my path. It doesn't mean that you're unworthy of the light of everything. It just means that you can admit your mistakes, and that's growth. When somebody can admit their mistakes, that's growth. Acknowledge that in anybody that you're around, because that is not a ego-serving trait. So our ego is what keeps us alive, keeps us running, right? In our human minds. When we are able to say what we did wrong and then we forgive ourselves, we're not looking for other people's forgiveness. Forgive yourself and be like, I will be better. Because the forgiveness means I'm not going to try to repeat this again. I'm going to do better. Once you do that, you're walking out of that crossroads. So I hope you can remember that when you see this, that visual of you have the earth and all the shit you did wrong and all the stuff you want to lay to rest and you wish everybody would forget about, and you're standing on it and you are literally going to forgive yourself so that you can walk out of there. It doesn't mean this didn't happen. It just means that you've forgiven yourself and you're changing.
And despite all of the religious symbology in this card, the archetype for this card is forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
With forgiveness, we're able to move on from our mistakes, stop judging ourselves, and accept that we are imperfect beings and move on to experience the wholeness and fulfillment of the world, which is the next card.
I will say, if you can forgive others, you'll also live happier, but
Yes,
you can also
most
just move
definitely.
on. Forgive or move on, whichever you want to do. Be indifferent. Just don't let it keep you stuck in that crossroad. Looking at the world, we are now to the last card of the Major Arcana, and this is the goal. This is when we started as the Fool, and we've gone through all this BS and dark stuff and good stuff and up and down and up and down.
Growth and
Oh, that's what we call it, growth. That's right. Yeah. Up and down BS, growth. Right. Now we're elevating.
this is evolution. Or
Evolution of the soul.
Elevation.
Elevation, evolution of the soul. We're at the world, and the archetype of the world is wholeness. So you see that laurel wreath all the way around there. Just think of that as something being very whole. And what's really cool is the two red, I think of them as ribbons. Yeah, okay,
They're red
good.
ribbons.
Yeah, the red ribbons, if you really look at them, they're infinity signs. It's literally as above, so below, infinity signs. Ooh, I feel like I want to sing and dance over that. All right, we have come full circle and learned all the lessons of the previous cards. When you get to this card, you've learned all the lessons. You've done all the work, been through all the bullshit of the previous cards. Congratulations on your 21 or 20. I mean, is the
22.
Fool well, no, because we're not, this is 22. Anyways, we don't need to get specific, but congratulations on all the BS that you have now surpassed, and you're here. We're whole, we're self-aware, we're accomplished. We've completed a cycle and we're ready for our next adventure. But the next adventure means that we have to say that we are the Fool again. We've learned all this stuff, and yet there's going to be more lessons and more cycles that come that do just this thing again, that I don't want to say test us, but give us experiences for growth.
Well,
That's
I
a
think
great
of
way to
this,
say it.
I think of it, that's exactly how I think of this.
Yeah.
So imagine your 20s. So I bet if you laid these cards out and thought about their meanings of each of them, you could make a story from starting when you're early in your 20s or maybe right out of high school, going through the world and how you've changed and gone through things that relate back to these cards. So it's a cycle. All it is one cycle through your life, but there are many cycles. Probably they last a decade, maybe they last a year, depending on what those cycles are. But
depending on the
that's-
situation, yeah. You could
Yeah.
go through all 22 cards in 1 year, or it could take you
that would
10
be a
years.
sucky year.
Wouldn't
that
it?
would suck
So,
though.
I mean, imagine going from like Fool to fulfillment in a year. Talk about the growth that's there.
With
but
all the things you have to learn.
I mean, that's with the people around you, that's with support, that's with teachers, that's with reflection, that's with introspection. It's just all the things that you got to do, and most people don't want to do that in 1 year. We got to take breaks because evolution of soul is hard. It's it's not comfortable. So who wants to be uncomfortable a lot of the time? So with the world, I would love to tell you about the symbolism. So the laurel wreath, that greenery is a laurel, and that was what was crowned on victors way back in the day, the laurel. And for all my witches out there, if you use bay leaves, the bay is called a bay laurel. So just think of that as like bay leaves all over the tarot cards. Okay. So the laurel wreath and the infinity symbols at the top are showing us that everything comes full circle, and it's just an infinite thing. We do not stop growing here on earth, which means we do not stop getting experiences that push us to grow while we're in our earthly bodies as spiritual beings. The four corners, you guys, let me show you. Okay, here we are. Ta-da! We talked about the Wheel of Fortune 2 weeks ago. I can't remember now.
Last week, I think.
Was it just last week? God, time flies. Okay, so the Wheel of Fortune and the World card, you can see that in the Wheel of Fortune, we had those fixed sign zodiacs, okay? All four corners where they were, they're learning, they've got their books open, they're doing stuff. And now they are real creatures. They have come to their fulfillment. They have learned, they've got the knowledge, and now they're really being themselves. So this is where knowledge changes us from the naive to the accomplished. That is a great symbol within this card to understand. When we reach the world, we have literally gone through all the BS and gained the knowledge to become our accomplished selves. Naive to accomplished. The maiden in the middle, she holds two wands that are reminiscent of the magician's wands. I mean, it's like the exact same thing. And she's got two of them, which means like doubling up the power. I think of Mario with like the one-ups and hitting the box, like just building it up and knowing that everything is possible. It's no longer just singular goals. It's multiple goals that she's seeking and can accomplish. The maiden and the fool. Ooh, okay, let's go on to the next one. Here's the Maiden and the Fool. These are the only two cards in the Major Arcana that are showing figures with movement. Everybody else is just stationary.
They're staged or sitting.
Stationary, sitting.
Yeah. They're not
still.
They're still. Yeah.
It's a snapshot of what they're doing. These two are moving pictures. These two are moving along their way. It shows that this continues on. So if we were to restart the cycle like we should, we go from the world to the Fool, and that's where the movement is. One is literally dancing into the next thing, and then there's an acceptance there of, I'm going to dance my way in right to the next cycle, the next party. Like, at least I've done one, I can do another one, I can get through it, I've been there, I can do this. And then we're going to talk about that the embodiment of movement is something that we learned, I don't know, a couple months ago or something. And if you have not heard this before, because I never have, and I've been doing tarot for like 25 years, all of the elements are here for the movement. And this is air blows, earth grows, water flows, fire glows, and spirit knows. And that is where we get to at the world, with movement right into the next cycle of saying, I can handle anything now.
I'm ready for my next adventure.
I don't need any material possessions. I don't need anything but my willingness to go forward. So we want to remember with the world card, when this comes up in a reading, that it's the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. And we've come full circle with the Major Arcana. Applause. Kat has your homework for this week.
I have your homework for this week. So it's 2 different exercises for you. The first one is you're going to practice reading with a spread of 3 cards. So you're sitting with your cards, you're shuffling, you're thinking of a question, and then you lay out in order 1, 2, 3 cards in a row, reading left to right. So your first card in that scenario would be the past. That card represents the past. The middle card would represent the future, or I'm sorry, the present, and then the last card would represent the future. That's an example of a 3-card spread. Find one that that sort of fits whatever it is that you are hoping to get some guidance from the universe. So what we want you to do at this point is, I know we're only in the Major Arcana, but we're going to go really fast through the rest of the cards. So it's time to sort of start. We've been looking at 1 card at a time. And if we think about a single card pull every day and we're reading it, that's fine. But once we get the cards together, we've got to be able to read the story or understand the progression of what's going on in the cards. So that is the reason for the 3-card spread. And you can use the book, but find the meaning, find the story. What is the message that you're getting from there? So practice that. That's one exercise. The next one is you're going to use your entire deck of cards. Woo! This one's a little more fun, and you don't need a book for this. You do not need, don't pick up a book with meanings or anything like that. You're going to do the same thing, only this time you're not asking a question, because you're going to tell a story about the 3 cards that you pull. So shuffle, 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 lay down 3 cards, and then make up a story. What's happening in the cards, and tell a story. Like, let's say it was the 3 of cups. The 3 of cups is 3 ladies dancing. They're dancing around, they're having a good time. So let's say the first card was the 3 of cups. The story might be, I went to a party and we had like such a good time. We were celebrating with all our friends. Let's say your next card is the wands, where the guys are fighting. What number is that? Is that 7 or 6? The guys with the wands that are fighting. I'm sorry, I can't remember. 5 or 6. Yeah, maybe it's 5. So the 5 of wands. So I went to this party and we're celebrating, and then people got drunk and they started fighting. And then the last card maybe is the 3 of swords, with the heart with the sword through it. And it's like Susie and Jerry hooked up, and then she got her heart broken because they went on one date and he never called her again. So that's kind of like the story that you could make up. And it's just for fun. It's just for you to get familiar with the cards and just start trying to make a story out of them. And when you do this exercise with the 3 cards, pull 3, tell a little story. And if you can't, don't worry about it. Just go to the next 3 cards and lay down 3 more cards and try to make a story out of, and you do that with your whole deck. It's really fun. What number is that? Is it 7? 5? 5. Okay. Yeah. The 5 of wands. Yeah. So the 3 of cups, we're at a party, we're drinking, we're having a good time. Then some stupid people got into a fight because they drank too much. And then there was a hookup between a guy and a girl at the party, and he got his heart broken.
I feel like this is my 17-year-old's Saturday night. I'm pretty sure I heard him tell the same story because he hung out at the beach and he doesn't drink because he has epilepsy.
Oh my God, it's a real story.
Literally, he had friends were drinking, and then this girl came over. He and I have matching stone bracelets of lapis lazuli. And this girl came over and started grabbing at his bracelet, and he's like, hey, don't put your hands on me. She's like, why are you so rude? He's like, Mom, was I rude, or why should she be able to touch me? That's not, and it was a whole thing we talked about. So Good job tuning
Okay,
into my story.
So remember that when you do this, so the second card, the first card is a practice reading a 3-card spread. Use your book if you need to. Don't make it, or just into it, whatever, but practice. But with that one, you need to spend some time with your cards. You need to focus and ask a question. And you know what? If you don't have anything this week, don't worry about it. Just skip it. But the second one is tell a story. And that one is the one where you're not going to use a book for the meaning. You're just going to make up a story about what happened and what's the progression here of these 3 cards.
And what's so fun is like, it's whatever you see.
Yeah,
it's just what you see.
I mean, what I said had absolutely nothing to do with the cards. Maybe the celebrating, actually. The 3 of Cups is celebration, and the 3 of Swords actually is heartbreak. But I mean, that's such an obvious card for me. The 3 of Cups and the 3 of Swords, the imagery of them is so vivid that it's hard not to say, oh my God, someone got their heart broken, or someone's in a love triangle with the 3 of Swords. And then the 3 of Cups where they're dancing, you're like, it's a party. I want to go.
You know what I really love about this story? If you guys didn't know, the cat is a Scorpio. She literally went from like, have a good time, have some stuff, fight and shit. That is her sign kind of does that.
That's how we roll.
It's just funny. She didn't even know she was doing that, but
I just made that up on the fly because it was the ones that I could think of.
Thanks for joining us for week 4 of our journey through the tarot.
This week we completed our journey through the Major Arcana.
Hopefully, in addition to listening to the lesson, you're spending time in study, practice, and reflection with your tarot deck.
Doing this will definitely help you become a better tarot reader, even if you only ever read cards for yourself or your friends and family.